You are listening to the Jboy Show, your number one source from the SEC.
My goal was to run through his soul and grab his heart when I run through his soul.
Kurt, Nate, Coach Staff, those are memories.
I think we've established ourselves as, I think, the premier conference in college football.
Now, the SEC is better at the top. It's better in the middle.
The Southeastern Conference remains the premier conference.
Takes the snap. Looking for the receiver. He's got Lutz Kirkland. Touchdown, Auburn!
When you think about it, it's always been the SEC and everybody else trying to catch it.
I think this is probably the best league from a competitive venue standpoint.
They have the most capable teams. You just look at those programs, the way they recruit, how they invest.
Snap to Burrow. 3 steps. Fires. Back corner of the end zone. Over the shoulder catch. Did he hold on? He did. Justin Jefferson. Touchdown. Tiger.
And now, your host, Jboy.
All right, hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining us on another edition of the Jboy Show, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, watching on YouTube, with our brand new YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you check out the jboyshow.com, grab some merch. Very excited about our guest today. We've had him on a bunch. First time we're going to get him in video. He's got a very angelic appearance. You'll see him in a minute. One of my favorite guys to talk to, especially in the recruiting game and knowing what's going on now that the 2021 class is pretty much over. We still got the transfer portal looking at the 2022 class. But before I do that, I got to give a shout out to betonline.ag. Head over there today. Online casino, it's always open. Get ready to bet the tournament. We got March Madness. Like I'm going to keep saying, I will bet every 12-5 matchup that there is because one of them will hit. I promise you, one of them will hit. Also going to have to put a disclaimer probably that this service is not better than any other service offered by anybody like a lawyer. But make sure you head over to betonline.ag today and tell them Jboy sent you. But without further ado, National Recruiting Director for Rivals, one of my favorite guys to talk to, Mr. Mike Farrell. Mikey F., what's good, man?
Not much. One's going to hit, 3 might not. I mean, you're going to lose money.
Hey, listen, well, that's the chance we take. That's why it's called gambling. I just hope the people over at betonline.ag have that good insurance policy in case they don't, but it's going to happen. The bracket's coming out soon. I'm just glad, Mike, we got it this year, and regardless of where you feel on whether we shouldn't have had it last year, I think the NCAA tournament is the best postseason event in sports. I just love it. I get infatuated with it, even if the team you root for is not in it. What are your thoughts on just having the tournament? Because I know you're a sports guy. You love sports like I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rite of passage to sort of call in sick that Thursday and Friday, and go to a bar and just watch games from, noon to midnight and just get plastered. That's what I did as a younger man. Now I appreciate it, obviously, because we didn't have it last season. So, and everybody fills out a bracket, and I get the 5-12 thing. You just got to pick the right 5-12 matchup. But nowadays, there's been some 2-15s, and those really pick out. So I don't know. I'm going to try to pick my spots here because I don't know anything about college basketball whatsoever.
Well, that means you're going to hit. That means you're going to win the bracket challenge. Those are the people that win the bracket challenge.
That's my hope, because it's always like someone at the office, that never watches college basketball that wins, and so that's going to be me hopefully this year. Yeah,
well, they just I'll take the one with the coolest mascot, and that's typically how it ends up working out.
I'm going to go based on colors and mascots.
That may be the thing. I'm going to have to write that down. But, Mike, I want to jump in right here. We got a big commitment coming March 13th, unless I'm mistaken, with Emmanuel Henderson, the 5-star running back, a guy that is super talented, that has a really high ceiling, seems to be an Auburn-Alabama battle. I'm leaning obviously Alabama right now. Kind of how do you feel about it? Because again, he's a guy that's obviously pretty highly rated, and that decision is going to reverberate once it happens.
Yeah, I mean, he's an in-state kid. It's going to come down to those two. I don't think anybody else has a shot. And you look at Robert Gillespie being hired away from North Carolina, and what he did with Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, and how they're going to be looked at in the draft. What Najee Harris did last season, it's quite the resume. But then you've got a legend in Cadillac Williams recruiting him for Auburn, and the kid probably grew up hearing and watching all about him. And Tank Bigsby had a tremendous season last year, so the new offense can be exciting, even a little bit more exciting for running backs because they get involved in a lot of different ways. But it's probably the Alabama if I had to guess right now. But that's not difficult. I mean, picking Alabama battle is it's not difficult.
Yeah, well, it's almost you can just walk in there. I don't want to take anything away from any of the guys. The recruiters they have, they're fantastic recruiters. Nick Saban doesn't hire guys that can't recruit, but that A means a whole heck of a lot right now. And if you're looking to make a business decision, obviously that makes sense, but you never know. It's recruiting. It's 17, 18-year-old kids. At the end of the day, it's going to be very interesting. Mike, before we jump into this too, and I didn't even have this written down. Me, I go off script all the time. And I know you've probably heard about it. What do you make about this Rush Propst deal? And again, look, I know I'm not going in the weeds or anything, but just how dumb is it to mention people by name when you're at a place like that? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I gave my testimonial on it. It's a hot story right now. But have you ever seen anything like that before? I've really never seen a high school coach to that level get specific, being recorded or not. And we all know, whatever. But what do you make of that whole deal?
I mean, listen, first of all, he's a loose cannon, always has been.
Yeah.
Not exactly the most credible guy.
Exactly. So agree.
Look at it like it's not a big surprise to me. I've heard some coaches say some stupid things over the years when it comes to, recruiting violations and told to me personally, and not for public consumption. I just dismiss it because, it's not whether I believe there's cheating going on in the SEC or with specific programs. I mean, we all know that stuff happens. It's been happening forever. But I look at the source, and that's not a good source.
Exactly right.
He's got an axe to grind. He's always looking for attention. I just don't think that anybody should really pay attention to what he's saying.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. And that kind of falls in line with what I said the other day. And again, I know that's kind of different than what we normally talk about, but a guy that's as traveled as you and as seasoned as you and understands what goes on in the battles, that just, really shocked me. And again, it is what it is. But moving on, right now we're in this 2022 class. Obviously 2021's behind us with I guess you call it the late signing period. I call it last call. You got to go home, but you can't stay here. Looking at this 2022 class, obviously you got some big names up there like you usually do, the Ohio States, the LSU's, Georgia. I look at Texas A&M, and they finished pretty high last year. Are you sensing a big shift? Because when I look at this conference and I look at the teams that are rising and falling and these new coaches that come in, whether it's Shane Beamer or Josh Heupel or Brian Harsin, Alabama's going to be scary. Georgia's going to be scary. LSU, I think they're going to bounce back, but Texas A&M is building a monster over there. And I look at it up front. Can you just speak to kind of the shift you've seen? And it hasn't been just last year, but since Jimbo's really gotten there and how Texas A&M is trying to set themselves up to become one of the big dogs in the SEC because they got more resource. They have as much resources as anybody. That oil money goes a long way.
Yeah, they've always been a sleeping giant. They've always been a massive underachiever. And I did an article today talking about teams that their talent, and they're number 4. And it's not under Jimbo; it's just previous regimes. They had a season last year. Obviously, Alabama, beat their pants off early, but after that, it was smooth sailing, and they made a good case to make the playoff. And that's where you would expect them to be under Jimbo at this point. They've got some replacements on offense that need to be made, but they've got a very young running back in Spiller and a good 1-2 there. Some talented wide receivers. The quarterback situation will be an interesting one. The defense is nasty. So, yeah, I think they're ready to make a run. This could be the year. It's not going to be an LSU 2019 type of run where everything went perfect and every player on your team is, a first or second round draft pick. But it could be the year with, Alabama breaking in new wide receivers, a new quarterback, Najee Harris gone, new running back. The defense would be better, but the offense could take a step back. A&M could get there. But when I look at 2022, the things that stand out to me, it's not A&M because I think they've always recruited well. They just haven't managed properly. I remember this is a team that had Kyler Murray and just blew that whole thing. They had Kyle Allen, who, started in the NFL for a couple different teams and sent him packing and just mismanaged everything about that roster. Like they were Kirby before Kirby when it comes to screwing up quarterbacks. And I think they're going to always recruit well and finish in the top 10 or so with Jimbo there. But I look at a rebound class for Penn State. They're number 6 right now. Didn't have a great class last year, had a bad season last year. I look at Florida State being in the top 10, which is actually exciting to me.
I think it's good for football. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they got Sam McCall, a high 4-star as well, and then Michigan number 10 with a new staff. I mean, they went from old to young. Every hire he made was under the age of 40, I believe, and you can feel it from recruits talking to them that this is just a different, aggressive staff for Michigan that's going to take them to a different level. Now they won't reach Ohio State level, but they'll get closer, and I think that's good for football. And then of course Sark being 5th there, and what he be able to do just selling Alabama. It's going to make for interesting conferences. We need the Big Ten to be closer. We need the Big 12 to be closer. The SEC is always a battle, despite the fact that Alabama usually wins it. And we need the ACC to be closer because Clemson's just dominating.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's funny. 2 of our production guys are director David Cohn and one of our other guys, Dave Hammock. One's a Michigan fan, one's a Florida State fan. I think you made their day. Dave's still tomahawk chopping back there as we speak. But you're right, man. It's good for if you love the game of college football. And look, me. This is an SEC show mainly. I'm going to pump my chest about the SEC, but we need Florida State to be good. We need somebody in the Pac-12 to wake up, or a couple teams over there. The Big 10 to get more depth. The Big 12 to get more depth to make it more interesting. And I'm going to get you on here one day and talk about expanding the college football playoff because I think I got a formula that would work without watering down the regular season, but that's another battle for another day. I do want to shift it to Darion Kendrick. The Clemson corner that we know left, a guy that's very highly rated, that's very talented. I thought what a classy move by Dabo Swinney, too, the statement that he put out, really taking the high road, regardless of what you think, really went in depth about the kid. But you look at some schools that are the finalists right now, or supposed finalists. You got Florida, you got Georgia, you've heard Texas, you've heard TCU. But if I look at Fitz, Mike, when you see what Georgia lost with Stokes and that group, they lost their 3 guys at corner. That would be a perfect place to plug Darion Kendrick in if it's a good fit. And that would add just another notch to what is shaping up to be, in my opinion, a Georgia team that can be elite if JT Daniels can stay healthy.
Yeah, and Kendrick's a tough one to track. And most of what I learned about Darion Kendrick's issues at Clemson are not really bad things. I mean, it's a consistent being late to practice. It's a consistent missing a team meeting and things like that. It's not, felony charges or robbing banks or anything like that. He does need some guidance. I think Dabo gave him as many chances as possible before he finally just said, you know what? I mean, this is how many last warnings can you get?
Yeah.
I think South Carolina would be a great place for him, to be honest, because South Point takes care of, South Carolina takes care of South Point kids and there's a comfort level there too. But when you're talking about, competing for a national title, Georgia seems to be the slot. I mean, they wanted Terrion Arnold badly at the end of the recruiting process because they needed somebody who had length outside, and they just don't have that. They're losing a lot in the defensive backfield, and Kendrick is a plug and play guy if he could stay on time or out of trouble. Texas is interested, but the other thing I've had trouble with Darion Kendrick is tracking anybody who knows anything about this situation. I mean,
yeah, it's tough.
The kid is just, and he's always been this way in high school. He's not aloof. He just doesn't talk about anything. So he's not a kid. He's got 2 cell phone numbers. Neither of them picks up. He's on Twitter, but he doesn't tweet. And he doesn't. I mean, he does follow me, but DMs he ignores and all this other stuff. So I'm going through like secondary information, like friends that went off to different colleges who still talk to him. Where's he going to go? And even they don't know. So I think it's going to come up and just pop out of the blue.
I agree.
He lands. I know there are many, many schools that are efforting, but some of those schools honestly have no way of getting in touch with him. And what they say is his entourage. And by entourage, I mean, kind of his buddies. So that's why I think South Carolina would be the fit to stay home. But I don't know if the Gamecocks want him.
Yeah, and it's you bring up a great point, Mike, because you can only give a guy so many chances before you lose credibility to the whole team. Because if you're a walk-on or somebody that screws up once or twice, they're kicking you off the team. But if you treat the other guys, the superstars or the NFL guys different, to me, that starts a ripple effect on the team. It's like, well, if I play good, maybe I can be late to a meeting or this and the other. And that's that crack in the armor or that crack in the wall that Nick Saban and them have been able to avoid. And you're either going to fit in or you're going to get out. And I do applaud Dabo for sticking to that, despite him being, an incredibly good player, which he is, a Sunday guy, a guy that can play zone and man, a guy that can press, do stuff like that, unbelievably flexible on his hips. And it's funny, you talk about DMs. I sent him one, and it'd be one thing if I got left on red. You know what I'm saying? If it was left on red, okay, you read it, we're interested. It's not even left on red. So, Darion, if you're watching this, just read it, dog. That's all I'm asking. Just read it. I don't care if you send me a message, cuss me out. I don't care. Just read it. But that is a great point.
He's not watching it. And
without a doubt.
He was a wide receiver when he arrived there, and that's what he wanted to be. They were too deep at wide receiver, and they asked him to move to corner, which wasn't his natural position, and he did so. And Dabo did give him numerous chances. So, I think this is a kid that is a good player. He got exposed a little bit against Ohio State, but that's understandable. Ohio State
happens.
But I think he's a second or third rounder, but he needs a redemption season, and he needs to be smart about it. But when I get not being responsive to the media, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But when you're responsive to major Power 5 programs that are interested in giving you
bad look
to fit in, then they just throw up their hands and say, listen, there's nothing I can do. I talked to one ACC team, pretty big program that said, we'd love to have him. We'd love to have him. We have no way to get in touch with him and haven't heard back from him. So if people want him, it's just who's going to be able to get in touch with him and get him to focus in and join their program. And likely that's Georgia, but I still don't count out South Carolina. I don't count out Texas. I don't count out Mississippi State. He's got some connections to a lot of schools.
Without a doubt. And I want to get into two guys, Walter Nolen and Denver Harris. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to eBay real quick. Head over to ebay.com/sneakers today. Get you a pair. Doesn't matter what you want. Like I said, the highest end shoe you can buy, the lowest shoe you can buy, sandals, shower shoes, whatever. They got all of it. Head over to ebay.com/sneakers today. Make sure you tell them Jboy sent you. A whole team of authenticators. They're going to make sure the tongue's right, the sole's right, the laces are right. It's exactly what you ordered. No games, no gimmicks, just what you want when you want it. That's ebay.com/sneakers. Want to start with Walter Nolen, a kid whose tape I think is really good. I think his ceiling is very high. Obviously very highly ranked. Dropped, I believe, a top 10 the other day. Some SEC schools mixed in there. I know it's early, Mike, and it's a lot of it's speculation this early, but how do you feel about Walter Nolen right now? Is there a few schools that stand out to you, or do you think he's a guy that's going to just keep it close to the vest and let this thing play out until the end? Because he's good enough. He can wait as long as he wants.
Yeah, I think he's going to play it close to the vest. I think there's schools that stand out. From the early diggings, I think Alabama and LSU stand out to him. Yep. There's connections to Michigan. His grandmother's in Michigan, and there's a lot of different layers there where an ex-Michigan player is kind of his mentor, and this, that, and the other. Tennessee connections, where his head football coach is a former Tennessee player, but I don't think they're really in there as much with all the nightmare NCAA stuff that's been going on and the way the roster's falling apart. Georgia, I think he put out a 10 and then he added 11, and I think that's how it's going to roll with Nolen. Now on film, when I saw his sophomore film, I was just absolutely blown away. We made him the number one player in the country. It's one of the best defensive tackle films I've ever seen because of his athleticism and his ability to get in the backfield and change direction. It's rare for 300-pound guys to be able to chase the passer the way this kid does. Yep. Now, his junior season was sort of up and down. He's been to a few different schools. There's question marks about him. I don't think he's going to go up to Michigan. I think he's an SEC kid, and I think it'll come down to Alabama and LSU in the end. But Florida's in there too, but those are the schools that sort of stand out for him.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. And again, you're right. I mean, that sophomore tape's pretty daggum good. And there's not a ton of guys walking around that are like that in general, like you said, that can be flexible in their hips and change direction and really give you a problem rushing the passer from the inside of the defensive line. We always talk about the defensive ends and all this, but if you got a 3-tech or you got a nose or you got a shade that's able to get out to the passer and collapse that pocket, it obviously makes it a lot easier for those defensive ends to just run the hoop and they actually run themselves into sacks. That's when you see that tackle get knocked back into that quarterback. But another guy from a school that a lot of our viewers will remember, same high school that put out Demetrius Davis, quarterback that signed with Auburn. Denver Harris, a guy that, I think is very versatile, a guy that's obviously highly ranked. Denver, from a recruiting standpoint, again, he's pretty active on social media and stuff like that. Mike, where do you kind of see it right now? Do you think this will be an earlier decision, or do you think it'll kind of hold up?
It could be an early decision, and then, we'll see if visits open up, and that's going to be the big thing this year. I mean, the early decision last year, a lot of them stuck. You didn't see a whole lot of decommitments. There weren't nearly as many flips. There were a lot of kids drop, but not, choosing to decommit because they couldn't take official visits. Denver is down to Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. I don't know if that's final. We had Ohio State and Clemson in there earlier. If he can get out to visits, I think this one goes till the end. I would give Texas and LSU the edge right now.
Okay.
But you can't count out A&M for any in-state kid, the way they're recruiting and the way the defense is going to play. And then, of course, Alabama was my initial thought, is that, Saban gets what Saban wants, and he loves Denver Harris. But I'm just not sure if he wants to go that far from home. So I think it's, right now, I would give the edge to LSU over Texas, and then Texas A&M and Alabama.
Yeah, and again, what a name too! What a football name, Denver Harris. I mean, that guy can obviously play. I swear names have something to do with something. Chipper Jones was always going to be good at baseball, 100%. Right when they named that, he was always going to be good at baseball. I really think there's something to that. But I do, as we're winding down here with National Director of Recruiting for Rivals.com, Mike Farrell, one of my favorite guys to follow. I'm going to ask you a TikTok question, Mike. I know you're on TikTok. We just got on TikTok trying to figure that out. It's like I feel like I'm at Bletchley Park trying to figure out the Enigma machine, trying to break the code on that one. But that's another story we'll get to later. But I do got to ask you that some of the new hires in the SEC, you look at Harsin, you look at Heupel, you look at Beamer. Out of those three, and again, it's early, and I understand that, just from a, maybe word of mouth standpoint or something you're hearing, which one of those guys would you say has had the most effect early, or you think has kind of separated himself? If they have, they may haven't, from the pack of the new crop.
Well, the best coach to me is Harsin. The best recruiter out of those three is Beamer. Mm-hmm. And the one who has the hardest job is Heupel.
That's all true.
That's kind of how I shake it down. Now, it's too early to really say what it is for recruiting, because, again, you got a coach that's coming from Boise State to Auburn who isn't really allowed to see players. So they've got 3 commitments there. You got a coach coming from UCF to Tennessee who's trying to, recruit to what has been a dumpster fire over the last month or two. And then you got Beamer, who was a great recruiter at South Carolina, but they're number 2 in the state and number 3, maybe 4 in their own division. So that's going to be difficult for them. So what I would say is, if I'm a South Carolina fan, recruiting matters, and we got to start getting more consistently in-state commitments, as well as hit the state of Georgia and move into North Carolina like Thompson did. If you're a Tennessee fan, you got to hope that you don't get slammed by the NCAA and that Heupel's offense will be as good as it was at UCF, or that he'll develop a guy like Drew Lock like he did at Missouri. And Auburn, I wouldn't worry about the star rankings as much, because Harsin and the staff he's put together, they're developmental guys. He's used to this. He's used to taking kids that, maybe 3 stars and letting them play like 4s. Now, does that work in the SEC? I don't know. It hasn't yet, but maybe it will for him. It certainly worked at Boise State, but I worry less about, oh my gosh, Auburn's not going to finish with a top 10 class like they did so many times under Chizik and Gus, because he's really a well-respected coach, especially offensively.
Yeah. Well, Mike, fantastic stuff, man. Obviously love to have you back on. I know you got some great stuff going. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter Instagram, and also TikTok. Me and you obviously have gone back and forth, talking about that stuff. It's a new medium to me. But again, I know you're killing it on there as well, my friend.
Yeah, I don't know why I like TikTok so much.
Me either. It's weird.
They don't like me. I mean, I put in the verification paperwork, right? I'm verified on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I mean, everything on demand. And they rejected me. Said no. And it made me feel bad about myself. But I still use it because it's cool. It's got some cool stuff on it. And it's really 30-second, 1-minute videos and all this other stuff. So now it's almost like the girl that says no to you. I'm like infatuated verified. So I'm Rival's Godfather on TikTok, and I will get a blue check mark on there for some stupid reason. And then maybe when I get that, I'll be like, tired of this.
Yeah.
Rivals on Twitter, Rivals Godfather on TikTok and on Instagram, Mike Farrell Sports on Facebook, Rivals.com front page. That's the easiest way to find me. And then from there, you can just go wherever I am.
Yeah, well, you are the Godfather for a reason, and I went the whole show without making the cat reference like I do every time when you come on here, because I just think that's hilarious that we made it the whole one. But I really appreciate you, Mike. You do a great job, man.
That's right there. She's sleeping though. She doesn't.
Oh,
want to
I got
bothered.
you. Yeah, I don't. I don't.
About any of this.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to bother her. I know how cats are when they get upset. But Mike, I really appreciate it, brother. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right, brother. Thank you guys for joining us as well. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on TikTok at THAJBOYSHOW, the Jboy Show as well. I'm going to start dropping that plug in there, but hit the merch. It's selling like hotcakes. I say get them before they're gone, but we are always restocked. The team does a great job of that. We got the away hats, the home hats, the away shirts, the home shirts, the hoodies that are the most popular, the gray ones, as well as the black ones. And we got some more stuff coming, so make sure you check us out. It's been another edition of the Jboy Show. And Jboy's gone. The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, technical director Dave Hammock, creative director David Culbertson, audio engineer Feyzan, production assistant Kyle Orr, and our executive producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, and of course we film at Melt Sports in Atlanta, GA. So come check us out.